pod number 3, I think we're at. Sent you a bit of a note the other day about coaching, whether we need one, whether everyone needs one.
Well, in a nutshell, if you wanted to answer that question, and there's more depth to it, but super quickly, is there any elite anything in the world who doesn't have one?
Yes.
Did Michael Jordan have a coach? Did Tiger Woods have a coach?
No, I couldn't agree more. I think everybody needs a coach. I think the question is, and we'll get a little bit off topic here in a moment about actual training. Obviously, we're in the track space, and we both believe that, it's imperative to have a track coach. But one of my thoughts in that process, or when I wrote that email to you the other day, was about whether you need a life coach, a business coach, all these other coaches that are now popping up everywhere. But let's just talk about what we both know and have done for a very long time around track. A track coach. We've seen plenty of people try and coach themselves, and the ones that I've seen probably haven't had success. I'm sure people have been successful. You've pretty much coached yourself the last X amount of years.
Yeah.
And you've done pretty well. So what are your thoughts?
Well, there's probably 24 people in our squad in total, and 3 of them coach themselves, even though they say they're in my squad. And of the 3 that coach themselves, one of them hasn't competed in 11 years because of injury and lack of confidence. Another one has been consistently injured as well, and he coaches himself, and his times have actually gotten worse when they should be improving. He's gotten worse. He comes to me every time it goes wrong. He comes to me, I give him some snippets, and then he goes away and does it all by himself again, and then just keeps coming back. He just cycles himself around, and he never seems to get the solution. So, and the other guy who was constantly coaching himself and said that he just knows what to do, he's now resigned himself to the fact that he'll never run again properly, so he's given up. They're the only 3, and the rest I have that actually take coaching have actually gotten better and are doing well and are still in the sport.
Here's my question. Do those 3 people, are they all men for a start?
No, 2 men, 1 woman.
Do they all have similar personalities?
Yes.
And what is that personality type?
Well, there's 2 themes to it. One theme is, and it's what I think I coined this phrase back in Sydney when, with our group, you've had stupid smart people and smart stupid people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of them is really intelligent, like really smart, way smarter than me. And she would say to me, "Yep, I agree with everything you said, and I know you're right, but I'm going to do this anyway." That's her answer. And I'm like, and I just do this, and I go, "But you've told me, it's the right thing to do, and you acknowledge that this will work for you, but you're going to do something else anyway." And she says, "Yep." What do you do with that? That's a smart, stupid person.
Why do you think that is? Is that just somebody that doesn't like being told what to do?
No.
Needs to make their own decision in the end? What do you think that is? Like, why? I mean, I know some of the very obvious reasons why people would prefer to be coached, and we can get into that in a moment. And I can recall one of the things that Anthony said to me about why he loves being coached. And it was just a really simple, because I love turning up to the track and not having to think.
Correct.
He said it's the part of my day. I work all day. Everything else I've got to focus on. I turn up and someone just tells me what to do. And I love it. And I think for a lot of people, that's a big part of it, right? They just,
it is.
We just want to be told what to do because we just want to switch off.
And I'd say 90% of my group don't want to think. They just want to turn up and go, "What am I doing?" And they'll just execute it. And that really works for them. The other interesting, really common theme of the 3 that coach themselves is none of them will run with a watch. All 3. They're the only 3 out of 24 that we refuse to run with a watch. and this is the hilarious bit, and want to come and tell you what their guesstimation of the times they're running, which are so far off, it's ridiculous. Like and they'll watch other runners and then go, I was running about that fast. And by the way, all three of them are not unintelligent people. They're actually all quite bright people, but there's something that runs through their veins, and it's a fear of the truth. Is that they don't want to know, because if they get told, which is why one of them, actually it's all three of them almost, that they rarely compete because they don't want to know. They don't want to be told that this is how fast you are, because then if they knew it, somehow in their mind that would be a confirmation of wherever they are, either that
Yeah.
they're not a good athlete or what people will think about them or whatever else. Whereas and they can't let that go. They can't walk onto a track, get a time, walk off, and they'll be so worried about what people think. And as you and I know, I can pick any Olympic Games, even if the Olympic Games happened yesterday, and no one could tell me the silver medalist in the 100 meters. No one. So no one's remembering your run 0.01 seconds after you've done it, except you. Nobody cares.
And nobody does care. Nobody cares
And nobody
about,
does care.
like,
No.
within 2 weeks after dying, nobody, your phone number's gone out of
No.
someone's phone and no one knows who you were. Maybe your
Nobody
mum,
cares.
but that's about it.
Oh, and one of the best scenes I ever saw in a movie where about nobody cares was Jerry Maguire. Remember when he was leaving the office and he was like, "Who's with me?" And one person said he's with it. And then as soon as he walked out the door, everyone just went back to work.
Yeah.
That's welcome to planet Earth.
Yeah,
Nobody
exactly.
cares. But people care way too much about what they think people are thinking about all day long.
Yeah,
And I can tell
100%.
you, as you know, 99.9% of people's lives are not taken up with thinking about you.
Yeah.
They just aren't. And that's
And it's
reality.
so funny how we all get hung up on that. I mean, I went through a bit of that with running as well. You just, even some events that you don't believe you're in your best shape, and so you don't want to turn up just in case you don't run the times that you think you could run and so forth. But the
100%.
whole coaching thing is a really interesting space, for me, where some people want to coach for the right reasons. And we can talk about, going back to Anthony, when I coached him, that he loved, and he knew as much as I did in the end. I mean, I passed on all the knowledge that I had over to him. And because he probably had more of a scientific background than I did, so some of it he actually knew more about than I did. I probably had more of the art and more of the finesse. I think the two things that you can't do coaching yourself is you can't look inward, and you tend to
Right.
overtrain. As an athlete, we tend to overtrain. We don't think we've done enough. And that was the one thing with Anthony, pulling him back all the time. But one of the best conversations I had was with Henry Mitchell, who we both know was an amazing sprinter. When he came back he went over to the US and trained with, you would know the squad better than me. Was it John Smith? The John Smith squad?
Oh, yeah, John Smith, yeah.
John Smith.
He coached Carl Lewis and
Correct. So he went to LA
awesome.
and ran with those guys
Yeah.
for a while, and he obviously got gobbled up because, as a great Australian white athlete over there in that squad, he probably was, so far down the chain that he didn't matter. And then he came back and he'd learned a lot, obviously, and wanted to coach himself. And some of the stuff I saw him doing at training, coaching himself was, and then just trying to do those sessions, on your own. I know as the coach of our own squad, this was quite a challenge for me. Knowing on the way to track the session that I had planned for the day and how much it was going to hurt. And I would be thinking, do I really want to do that session tonight for myself and the squad? Because I actually know how much it's going to hurt and I really don't want to do it. And I think as an athlete, we all battle with that all the time, where if you're just an athlete and turning up and being told what to do, you just do it, right?
Sure.
You don't actually get to think about that session's going to really be hard today. So.
Well, I mean, I don't know who said this, but I wish I could remember which coach in the United States said this. But they said, bad athletes coach themselves, and good athletes get a coach, and elite athletes get told the truth.
Yeah.
And it was a coach in the United States, and it's kind of counterintuitive to myself, who, as you know, and I haven't had any coaching for some years now. I've just and there's a couple of reasons for that, which doesn't sound smart. You know, you think you need to have a coach, but I was on a track with 4 other Australian coaches who were contributors to what I was doing. I'd always be checking in with them, and they watched all my sessions because they were with me on the track all the time, watching what I was doing. And I always had really good runners around me that were dragging me through sessions. And I pretty much ran exactly the same model that you did and you have, just with some slightly nuanced parts to it. And the only time I really nuanced it was if I was tired or I had a niggle or an injury and I had to modify something. But it was literally the same program with some minor adjustments for my age, where I was physically, and just a couple of those little anomalies. But other than that, it's essentially exact. I ran the same model.
Yeah, and that makes complete sense. I mean, and that's what a coach does anyway, right? They know
Yeah,
when the athlete is either tired or, they're a little
yeah,
bit off, or, the athlete is aging, they're more susceptible to a particular injury. You know how to make those modifications. And
yeah.
you've spoken about this before. And I remember years ago, you made the comment about some people are trainers and some people are coaches.
Oh, yeah.
And
Well,
just,
training being the science, because training is a science, coaching is an art.
sure.
And as you know, and you have this ability, is to be able to look at an individual athlete and go, you know what, this session for that athlete won't work, and
Yeah,
this is why. But that session for this athlete will, and this is why. And yet both those athletes could be 400-meter runners, or 200, could be anything. But either session is good or bad for that athlete. It's the wisdom to know the difference. Whereas a trainer will just run them.
why do you think that is? Do you think that people get stuck, like as a coach? Do they not have that ability to see laterally, or just have that awareness to actually see things differently? Or do they just get stuck in, this is what the textbook says, this is what you should do?
I think that's part of it. I think part of it is they've received some information about coaching and about a model, and they don't have the wherefore to go outside it. So therefore, their go-to all the time is just to default back to it. So if an athlete gives them feedback or they see something, even though they might look at it and go, there's something not right about that, but I don't know what to do about it, so I'll just default back to my model. I think Pete was a bit like that in that regard, is that if he saw something, he'll just go, oh, well, you just couldn't do it. And just go back to the spreadsheet, just go back to the model and keep
Yeah,
running,
yeah,
just keep running. And I've actually got a middle distance coach at the track at the moment who just writes all a session down on the whiteboard for everyone.
yeah,
And there's 20, 30 people there, and they all just run it. And within minutes, they're scattered all over the track,
yeah.
like Brown's cows. And it's training, it's not coaching. And
It is
so,
difficult as a coach, though. I mean, and I was fortunate, and when you ran with me, that we had such a small running squad, and we were very
yeah,
similar athletes.
correct.
Clearly, as your squad evolves and gets bigger, and you've got this disparity of athletes, and male and female, and younger and older, that it needs to be broken up. But I think it is an interesting thing, and we saw it for years at our track, just how particular coaches did use that same formula all the time for every athlete, and it just didn't work. And they could, and I think sometimes, and I had a particular way to coach. I actually, coached and ran a particular program for a very long time. It was taken over some from Pete's training and then adding my own stuff to it. But you still had to modify, and there had to be those nuances in there. And I really go back to Anthony again, where he just couldn't break 11 seconds,
Yep.
for 100. And he was just training the same way over and over again. And then I just took him aside and spent maybe 3 or 4 weeks with him. And I could clearly see he had the speed. He just was doing the wrong type of training to get that little bit more out of his body. And for people listening, that, this is a guy that weighed 100 kilos that ran 10.8. So he was a big unit to run that sort of speed. But yeah, but other people were just giving them the same process over and over again, and he just couldn't go any faster. So yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? That people are reluctant to get a coach. And what about in everyday life? What do you think about the average person getting a coach or getting a trainer or getting someone to help them or just going to the gym? Do you think, there's a space for people to actually go out and get some sort of coaching just to get going? If someone was starting from scratch, if someone came to you, they haven't exercised for 10 years, they don't necessarily want to sprint, but they just want to get back into some sort of shape, would you recommend they get a coach?
Um, yeah, in that particular scenario, I'd strongly recommend it simply because there is, and I've said this to someone actually the other day. I said, we've never had an era in our history, in the history of humanity, where we have so much access to information, but we are so disillusioned with what we're seeing. I've never seen it in my life as bad as it is right now. So yes, I would get a coach simply for the simple reason is that person, it's not about them, even though giving you the right things to do, which it is at some point, but it's more about them disseminating what's not to do and what is wrong. And I walk through gyms every day because I'm in the I'm at the performance center, as you know, and all 6 days a week, and I see it. I just walk around. You just shake your head. You're watching what people do, and you know they've been watching too much YouTube, and they're doing stuff like you shake your head and you just think you are just going to get yourself into trouble because you've seen someone else who could be an elite athlete, do something that is way beyond where they need to be. Um, you know,
The best and the
um,
worst again, right? I think if you have some knowledge yourself, I think the ability to gather information today is amazing. You
yes,
can go off and actually, find, as you said a little while ago, with that 400-meter runner and her hamstring workouts, but you know how to actually take that information and apply it to either yourself or to another athlete. But
yeah,
the average person that doesn't have that knowledge, they see her doing that hamstring program and they say, oh, I'll go and do that. But they've got no idea, how to apply it, how much volume to do and so forth. So I think we're in you're right, the best and worst time ever in terms of, this information that's available to everybody. But it's too readily available and too easily mis, you know, um, misinterpreted or misused by so many people out there.
Well, it's just that whole thing, and I mean, and I know you're familiar with this as well. I mean, I had a 45-year-old guy come down to the track on Sunday, looking to get back into the sport. This is a great example. The first question he asked me was, I only fell over. He
When can
said,
I compete?
"No, even worse. This is this is
Can
the
I do
level."
block starts?
No,
Can I
it
do
was.
starts?
What are all the records? Because he saw us at the end of I set up two teams of seven, so 14 athletes in a 4x100 continuous relay.
Hmm.
So never done one of them, let me tell you. So because it takes about, with the athletes we had, and it was mixed, it was girls and guys, it takes about a minute for the baton to get round. So you're running 100 meters every minute on a continuous relay, and it's a
Yeah,
race.
yeah,
So
yeah.
there were some people that ran 12 times.
Wow.
And they were smashed. And myself and my 400-meter training partner, we were on opposite sides because so we could keep evening up the race. So we would adjust to keep the race really competitive.
Yes.
And he saw the end of it and he went, "Oh man, you guys are all smashed." It's like I could towel all you guys up and all that. And I looked at him and I just knew straight away, this guy, he probably could run a bit, but he wouldn't hold a candle to our 400-meter group. Like he
Yeah,
would be.
sure.
So he's going to come down. So we're going to teach him a little lesson about running. But interestingly, then we had our AGM yesterday, and I got in, and one of the like head officials is saying, "Chris, you've got to stop trying to turn this sport into an elite sport. You need to set the bar lower." This was his argument. Said, "Chris, set the bar lower," and I said, "I'm just not built that way." I said, if you want me to lower the bar, you get someone else. Go find a coach or someone that wants to take people on and tell them to lower the bar. Make people not run as well. It's not where I'm at. I want
Was
people to
he
improve.
suggesting lower the bar as getting more people that are
Yeah,
coming from
Muppets.
like
Fill it up with Muppets.
yeah, that's an interesting sort of take. I mean, I
Yeah.
suppose Do we build the foundations of the sport by allowing everyone to come in and then see if people actually survive and get through? There's probably a program for that, but when you want to be a coach and coaching half reasonable athletes, I don't know, it's a bit crazy to me.
I wouldn't do it. I'm not interested in coaching Muppets any more than you would be.
No,
Is
no.
because then you don't become a coach, or you become as a babysitter
Babysitter, yeah.
for people that just have got nothing better to do on a weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like that's fine. Now, I'm sure well, actually there isn't. There'd be no track coaches that want to babysit. I can tell you now. Otherwise, they're not.
No,
There's something else.
I think I've been to all sorts of different. When I'm over in Adelaide, seeing my buddy's son, he's doing karate at the moment, and obviously, it's a very disciplined sport. They go through a whole process when they walk in. They bow to their instructor as soon as you walk in the door, and there's a whole disciplined approach. And obviously, it's just a mixed class from 5-year-olds up to 65-year-olds, and the 5-year-old kids, some of them in there are just for babysitting. The
Yeah,
parents drop the kids off. They don't care what they do. The kid's running around. The instructor, because he's a disciplined sort of a guy, he even walks over to the parents and he's like, yeah, you know what? If this is just a babysitting class for you, you need to actually find somewhere else.
yeah,
And I
totally.
think that's unfortunate. Um, what do you think about like coaches just taking on any athlete? Obviously we've spoken about this in the past as well, where I think some athletes aren't suited to some coaches, but then certain coaches won't actually identify that among with themselves and actually move that athlete on. Particularly if it's a good athlete, right? Every coach wants to hold on to those really good athletes because they want
Yeah,
the name and the recognition themselves. What do
they
you
do.
think? What do you think about a coach being able to say, "Hey, you're not right for my squad, but I know such and such a coach you would fit much better with than his style of coaching."
Well, my only experience is that there's plenty of coaches that'll hang on to good athletes when they shouldn't, but they're all too ready to punt athletes when they're no good. So every coach I've ever met, if athlete's not right, they get rid of them quick smart. And if they're half good or even a chance, well, they'll hang on to them for dear life. That's been my experience. I don't agree with it. I think unless you really think that what you're contributing is going to take that athlete to their full potential, then you should let them go. If you can't get them there and you know that, then you should let them go.
Why do you think coaches don't let them go?
Right, so it's just ego. Most coaches that you'll meet, especially if you're up here in Queensland, oh my God, there's one coach up here. I'm not going to say his name on this
No,
podcast because it's well known.
I'll have to cut it
But
out.
yeah. But he's just lost a heap of athletes for exactly that, and he's got an ego the size of Nebraska. But he lost. I think he's lost about 12 athletes, and 4 or 5 of them are Olympians. They're like, and because he refuses to um, let go and you'll just sit on saying that I'm the best coach in the world.
I mean, we obviously know more about the sport we've both been involved in for a long time now. I've been out of it for some time though, and you're still in it. Um, how many athletes do you think? And I know this is a hypothetical question, but I would believe there's a bunch of athletes that should have made it to at least national or international level. They may not have been, amazing international athletes, and I'm talking about Australia at the moment, but I'm sure this applies all around the world. That was due to the coach. Like how many athletes that have we seen come through the track over the years? And I know a couple straight away down at Narrabeen that had they been with a different coach, I personally believe they would have gone further because
Yeah,
the coach, just their coaching techniques and their personality,
mm.
not so much clashes, but just didn't gel completely. And they didn't have the athlete's interest at heart. It was all about themselves.
Well, there's some great examples up here of athletes, and there's one in particular I know. She's an extraordinarily good track athlete, but she's in a squad of 30 plus athletes. So she kind of disappears into that ether
Yeah.
of and it's really a training group, but she's enormously talented. She's young, and so she won't leave. She's already been made the Olympic Games for a 4x4 relay, but hasn't really gone on to become a great individual in her chosen event. Now, I think she would do much better under a different coach, but she will not leave. And there's reasons for that. But I arguably, it's hard to know, particularly in this country when we don't have a lot of elite athletes. I mean, but if you look back over a few decades, I think it's easy to see um, the ones that probably, I think there's a lot of cases of athletes, had they been in different circumstances, would have done better. There was one particular athlete, who was it? Not Matt Shervington. It was another really good sprinter we had that had an opportunity to go and work with John Smith in the United States and turned it down and went somewhere else and then just disappeared into the ether.
Was that our 400-meter runner? I
I can't,
think personally that I mean Shervington he had a really good coach, Michael Kamel.
it
I
wasn't
think
him, it was someone else.
had a great squad. He had 400-meter runners. Here's a question: what do you think is the optimum size of a squad of that particular? Let's say let's group 100-meter to 400-meter runners, because they can do similar loads. Obviously, if you're a pure 100-meter runner like Shervington was, it's a little bit different. But what do you think the optimum number of athletes in a squad should be?
6 to 8
Yeah,
max.
yeah, I agree. Max.
Four's ideal. 4 to 5, 6 to 8 max. Because
Yeah,
you can't, after that, you can't coach.
I would
You
agree.
just
I
train.
would agree with that. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, you can still really personalize training. You can still do a one-on-one coaching, still see all your athletes, even if they're doing different things on the track. But I think beyond that, it gets to a point where you are starting to just lump athletes together that are just doing a session that's probably not the perfect session for them. You're just dropping them in with someone else. So, yeah, I agree.
And what's even more important about those 6 to 8, they just can't be 6 to 8 anyone.
No.
Really important who they are, their events, and how they gel together as a unit.
Yeah.
That's what makes a successful squad, is you need a dynamic that is going to create that level of excellence.
Yeah.
That's what you need.
Why do you think, and in this country, we've both had experience in both, not so much coaching. You coached a little bit in the US. I haven't. I've spent a lot of time there, though. You notice when you go to the US, the coach across any sport in the US, the coaches are really recognized and have a lot of respect.
Yep.
You're called coach.
Yes.
You're referred to as coach. I'm a big lover of the UFC, as you know, and when I watch the UFC, the respect that everyone has for the coach, the commentators, the people in the audience, everybody calls the guy coach. You come back to this country and a coach is just, I don't think we have the respect. I just don't think.
Not there.
And if people are, I say people, I'm generalizing, the general public or the general sort of population doesn't recognize or realize the amount of work that coaches actually do behind the scenes.
Correct. They
Huge.
don't.
Huge.
And it's just slightly off topic for in terms of track, in terms of and coaching and the perception of it in, say, our country versus the United States or elsewhere. I had a woman come to me and she had some significant medical conditions, and she's been advised by her doctors that if she doesn't get hold of her, her fitness levels and her weight and this and all these types of things that are very, very important for good health, that she would be in some trouble. So she came to me for help. And I agreed, because she was a good friend of a friend. And I said, I'll help you. And she said, is $20 an hour okay? And I said, well, you tell me what your health's worth, and then tell me how much you want to pay. I said, I'm telling you right now, no, I'm not doing it for $20 an hour. But if you think that's all your health's worth to save your life, I'm sure there's someone out there that will take you on.
Yeah.
But it's not me.
Yeah.
I said, until you value your health properly, I said, I really don't want you to come back to me with any excuses or anything like that. She went away. 6 months went by and she's come back.
Yeah.
And she's gone, I think it's worth $100 an hour. And I said, you're getting closer. I said, but you need to start valuing your health the same way you're valuing my time.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
When you get there, then you're on your way. But until you do, you're just going to keep eating cakes and biscuits, and you're going to put yourself straight into an early grave. But that's your choice, and I'm not taking any responsibility for that. So figure it out, get your priorities straight, and then come back to me. And she did, and I'll probably take her on, but she's gonna learn the value of money and comparing it to her life. There's a relationship there that she is failing to see.
100%.
So I think that's a great example. I know I went a bit off topic there, but and you've heard me say this a billion times, as you know. I said people do not value their health because they got it for free.
Yeah, I don't think we value enough things in life. I mean, we've always, if you want to learn something though, go and find people that are really knowledgeable and typically pay for it. And if you can pay for it one-on-one, the compression of the process and the compression of the learning curve is immense.
Correct.
And I would say to anybody out there starting out in anything, go and get a coach. And even if they're expensive, you will be better off paying that person $100, $150 an hour, whatever it may be, for 5 or 6 hours, intense hours. You will learn so much in that short period of time, as opposed to wasting 10, 12, 14 weeks on YouTube trying to figure stuff out yourself.
Oh, 100%. Like if you take Wade Van Niekerk, holds the world record for 400 meters, do you want to go and give him $1,000 for an hour?
Yeah.
Or do you want to talk to me?
Yeah.
I mean, people, it makes so much sense to do exactly what you just described, because what you will do to the learning curve and how quickly you'll go up a learning curve, you're better off getting people who have done things before, who've become experts in a very narrow field, and getting them to explain the steps and the difficulties, the things that'll get you there faster, quicker, and in a more educated way than dealing with dills or people who make claims that they can't back up.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest problem we have in today's world, right, with social media. And I read something the other day about it. I've been listening to the Arnold Schwarzenegger's podcast at the moment, and they were talking about influencers and the amount of information that influencers are putting out that is actually becoming harmful to people, and I couldn't agree more. And that goes back to the point about, having a coach, I think in the beginning as well, to get where you want to go is just imperative, particularly in certain sports. If you want to get better, I think you really need a coach. Well, that might be a wrap. I don't have more to add there. We could probably go on about this forever, but we'll talk about the topic another time. We'll get back to it. Maybe we'll have a few athletes on and we'll get Mike on and chat to him about coaching as well and what the benefits he saw. So yeah, and I'll get Anthony on as well. All right. That's a wrap.
All right. Good stuff.